How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the next episode. In the prior episode, you can see where at the very bottom of the shot, we drilled the holes and put in brass fittings, covered them with Kevlar. That allows us to have water be able to be drained out of the ski locker underneath the fuel tank, which to me is a very questionable design, but it is what it is. And then it goes through the second bulkhead, which goes into the bilge area, which also has a matching brass sleeve or drain plug. As we talked about in the prior episode, it's 3/4, and then at the back it's got a 1/2 inch piece tied into it to give the minimum thickness. What we're going to do now is we're going to start prepping for getting the fuel cell installed. Hopefully you've got the type of fuel cell that sits above your floor, maybe to the right of the motor. Those are ideal. I like those the best. A lot less consideration having to be done with putting a fuel cell under the floor, but that's how this design is, so we're going to deal with it. Let's talk about how that's going to happen. So whatever level you use, you want to try to use the longest one possible, but I've been using this 2-foot level as you see on the fuel cell lately. Been working out pretty good, so we're going to keep up with it. But if you got a longer 4-foot level, it's probably better. So let's kick things off. As you saw in the prior episodes, we went through and leveled off all these stringers. So what you want to do first is you want to take the boat and make sure front to back it's perfectly level on one of your stringers. The second thing you're going to want to do is try to make sure it's level left to right as well, because that's also important. Once you've got that confirmed, which we do, then you want to try to find a point on your fuel cell if you're using one like this. You can see here we've got these little pieces. Hopefully they are level, and we'll set our 2-foot level on top of that. You'll notice it's not quite level at all, and that's because it's not raised up. I kind of cheated before the video started and prepped it where it's supposed to go. I'll get under this fuel cell. Let's see if I can lift it up a little bit. And it's pretty snug. As we designed the sides of this, we designed it on purpose to be pretty snug. But we're also going to need to put some backing as well behind here. Originally they had this, I want to say it was probably 1/2 inch. It could have been 3/4, hard to say. I had to go back and look at the wood. But they also had like a 2x4, and it's just for added stress because, as you can imagine, when this thing's got 20 gallons of fuel in it, it's going to weigh a lot. But anyway, take my word for it. I already leveled it, and I drew where the holes are going to be. So what we're going to do next is we are going to go get a piece of Douglas fir, and we're going to put that Douglas fir directly behind it. I got to measure that. I believe that is going to be wider than a 3.5 inch 2x4. So we'll have to go check it. I've got some 2x6. Maybe we'll put behind it as well. The other thing I want you all to consider is this section of the boat right here under the fuel cell has 1/2 inch plywood going over top of it, and there's nothing to keep it from bowing underneath. There really isn't, if you think about it. So what that's going to do over time is it's going to create a U in your plywood, because this is a common area for everyone to walk around in the boat. I think this is part of the design that I don't really agree with at all when it comes to putting a fuel cell directly in the middle, but it makes sense. You think you got 20 gallons of fuel, where else better to put it than in the middle of the boat? So it kind of makes sense in some ways, but I think what you need to consider as well is we need to have some sort of brace to go across it. Just something so people who are walking around it, it'll give it something. So I've been debating on putting a 2x4 sideways, which technically isn't the strongest way that you would want to put a 2x4, but we also have this vent tube, this 5/8 vent tube in our way, and we don't have very much play. We may have room for a 2x4 to slide across here. And my thought was was put a 2x4 right across from the left to right, and I also thought maybe we can do a vertical piece of marine grade plywood across too and just make a notch. But if you think about it, if you make a notch in it, over time it's going to crack right where this notch is. So we need some type of wood that is the same all the way across from left to right, so as people are walking on it, we both know that it doesn't crack. And also we want to make sure we're not having to cut around this piece, because we both know this is almost kind of directly in the center, this vent tube. So some things to consider here. But obviously making backing for added weight for the fuel cell, that's easy. More than likely, I don't know, I may just do another 3/4 inch sheet, back it down, and use that to hold the extra weight. That would give us a realized, I believe it's like 1.5 inches. My math is correct. We can do that, or I may do a 2x4. We'll kind of see. I'm going to go look at some wood real quick and show you what I come up with. It's just, I know for sure, just putting the 3/4 here over time, this wood probably would likely bow back and forth. We don't want to do that. So let's do a couple things. I'm going to take a measurement across here, and let's see how wide these clips are. Yep, right about 4 inches. Your clips may vary, but a 2x4 isn't going to really work. We would technically be able to make it work because we've got the pattern here, and the pattern to catch the screws. Yeah, those are about, it's hard to tell, but it's about 2.25 inches. Yeah, you could probably, you'd be able to physically get the 2x4 behind her. You just kind of have to center it. But I mean, I like the Douglas fir. I think it's good. And the Douglas fir is kind of in an area where it's serviceable, so if you ever did have to pull it out, you could do it. But I prefer to put stuff that isn't serviceable, meaning under the floor. We use something that is designed to be in contact with water, which we all know is my favorite, marine grade plywood. So likely I'm probably going to go with marine grade plywood in the back here. Just double up, 1.5 inches. I mean, that's more than enough. This stuff is great. It's flexible. It works great if it does get wet. And it's in an area where I trust is going to be sealed off. We'll talk about the foam that we're going to put in here on later episodes, but I got that in today. So that's something else we're going to talk about. So anyway, I pretty much decided already what I'm going to do. I'll probably end up going, I'll probably just make this exactly 4 inches, and then we'll measure the back side as well. Okay, and it looks to be, see if I can get it to focus. Look at that, about 6 3/4, perfect. So I'll probably take the measurement right at here, 6 3/4, and then write them across each one. So it'll be 4 inches wide. This will be 6 3/4. I'll make that measurement, that one over there, so on and so forth. So next thing we'll do is we'll take the stainless steel screws and we'll shoot them in there to hold that other 3/4 inch sheet. And that'll give us a really good backing for it. And then the second piece we're going to do as part of this design is we need to find something that we can run across. I may get a piece of aluminum, angle iron, thinking about that too. Another idea. It won't rust. It'll oxidize, of course, but it won't rust. And then, actually, I did forget too, we need to make cutouts for the rear, for the fuel line to go across. I do have the old fuel line, and I may bring that in too. Let's go ahead, actually, since we're talking about it, let's lay the old fuel line in where it used to be and talk about where we're going to have to cut out on the back of that bulkhead. All right, take a look here. This is another reason why you don't want to throw away all your old material, because if you do, you may run into a scenario where you need to test fit some stuff and you don't have the old template, if you would, the old hose to figure out where things used to go. Well, you can figure it out, it's not that hard, but so I kept this. The reason why, by the way, this is a 1994 boat. If you see my carburetor rebuild video, it kind of goes over the whole reasoning here, but rubber that was designed in the early 90s was not designed for use with alcohol or ethanol. So now the majority of all fuel that goes into your boat nowadays is all going to be at least 10, maybe 15% ethanol. It's great, but what it does on rubber is it actually causes it to dry out, and it also cracks it, which is not good for a boat because that creates fire hazards and all kinds of stuff. So that's something I talk about in my carburetor video, is we actually have to go in and replace all the old seals, because what you'll find is, of course, it cracks when people start using the newer upgraded type of fuels that have ethanol in it. And we're not talking E85, by the way, because most boats aren't designed to run on E85 anyway, but the ethanol nonetheless, alcohol will dry out these hoses. And it looks on the surface, this is marine grade. So this is a 5/8 vent tube, and this is, let's see if we can get the focus, is 1.5 inch fuel fill. Easiest way to get it is get the Sierra brand. We'll talk about the one that I got as a replacement, but you can see in the back side here, we started developing some cracks. It's kind of hard to see in the light, but as it makes the turn, it seems to be where the most amount of stress was on it. And that, of course, is where I started seeing some of the cracks on the old hose. So as you can imagine, I'm not looking to have a safety hazard in this newly refurbished boat, so we're going to go through and replace it. The hose, just so you're wondering, is going to be a Sierra part number. It typically comes in a 12-foot run, just in case you need it that long. Ours is going to be 7 foot across, and you just want to make sure you have enough so you can route it in a way that it doesn't obstruct things. You can see here it kind of runs in the bilge area along where the engine mount is, so you can kind of tuck these lines together here. It doesn't mess with your engine stand. You can still service the whole area. If you also notice, when you go to put in your flooring over on this way, it won't affect any of your flooring. You'll see over here. So it kind of just, everything is nice and neat out of the way. You could in some ways maybe go through the floor and have it run underneath the floor and then do a 90-degree turn straight up. But the hose isn't serviceable if you ever needed it to. Be, so it's better to kind of run it in this way. And plus, this area under the floor anyway is considered, it has exposure to water because it's where the drain goes through from the ski locker, flows underneath this tank. We want to make sure if something does leak, we'll notice it because it'll come out the drain hole right there, meaning something leaks in the fuel area. We'll be able to smell it. All right, so anyway, let's talk about placement. So you can see here, they kind of offset it at kind of a weird pitch. I guess they did it on purpose. It's probably not the worst pitch to have, but what makes it kind of difficult is, yeah, we'll be able to get, the 1.5 inch fill on there, but as it comes through this spot in the marine grade plywood, this is outside diameter is 2 inches, by the way. So if you're looking for, inside is 38 millimeters or 1.5 inches. So they got a lot of meat in this thing to keep it good. So what I'm going to have to do is try to drill likely through here with an 1.5 inch hole drill, which I've got already. And then we're going to have to try to make a pretty tight turn to get there. So I'll probably off camera do a few test runs with this to see what angle with it plugged in like that I can comfortably turn this without effectively crimping it. The new upgraded 1.5 inch fill tube that I found by Sierra seems to have these little ribs in it, which the ribs are going to allow for more flex, whereas if you notice, this is just like a fire resistant coating around your typical rubber fuel line. That's another reason too, by the way, because most fuel filler hose may or may not be rated for fire, and this one is. That's kind of what this outer surface is, so it's got to be fuel rated. If you're wondering too, the longest that you can typically find in hardware stores that are fuel fill lines, about maybe 3 foot at the most. The easiest way is to order the fuel fill line, and it's the longest section possible. You never know if you're going to need it. Is going to be online. I got mine from Amazon. And then your vent tube is 5/8. This I can tell you right now, gosh darn, this is this is not flexible at all. And it's not like it's rigid. That doesn't seem like it's the problem. It's just, you know, over time this rubber hardens and it kind of scuffs off a little bit on your hand. Not too bad. But yeah, nonetheless, I don't really trust it. So we'll go through here. We're gonna drill a hole saw cut. I want to be able to. I'm likely not interested in notching it like a U shape underneath. I'd rather kind of have its own little port. I mean, that's the idea. I don't know. I'm gonna play around with it a little bit and see what I come up with in the design here. But we need to allow for a 2-inch hole, and I believe this is going to be outside. Diameter's 1 inch, so we'll probably have 2 holes, one on the right side, one on the left side. So as we're talking about prep and whatnot for getting the fuel tank added to your boat, there's some things you just want to consider before just tightening all the screws up and calling it good. As it is right now, if I were to just put the screws in, you know, all 3, 6, 9, 12 screws, we would have issues where the fuel cell hits the bottom of the boat because there's not enough strength along these edges. So something to consider. And then also here, where you're going to make your cutouts. So the little things to think about when we're talking about prep videos for putting your fuel cell in. I've done a boat before that didn't have the fuel cell in the floor, and I could tell you, I mean, we would already have the flooring on and rocking and rolling by now. I could tell you if it was that design, but you know, fortunately we're not that lucky. The fuel cell that I used to have was right there on the left side of the motor. It was great, but it is what it is. We're gonna deal with it. So anyway, let's call it good. I believe we're at just about 17 minutes on the prep video for installing the fuel cell. I hope you liked it. More to come as we install the backer pieces for the fuel cell, and then in the second episode as well, we're going to make the cutouts for the placement of the fuel fill hose and the vent line. And also, I forgot to mention, this is where your fuel comes out of and goes to the carburetor, or basically goes to the carburetor. So we actually need 3 holes. Just thought about that. So hope you liked the video. If you're not already subscribed to my channel, click on that picture of me. I'm riding in a boat, and subscribe to my videos. Leave some comments if you've got something you're wondering about or got some questions about your design of prepping for a fuel cell. Hit that like button if you thought the video was helpful. Stay tuned to the next episode, and we'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one.